What is up, you guys? Welcome to the Twink Revolution. I'm Sam.
I'm John.
And we're back from Vegas, baby.
It's Vegas, the greatest city on earth. Live from Las Vegas City. It's...
Twink Revolution.
Is that a different... Yeah.
A little dated.
Yeah, like Saturday Night Live, we haven't been funny in several years. Yeah, Vegas was great.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it. It was a I mean, as promised, I actually got to see Morrissey, which was spectacular.
Yeah, and I got to see fans rush to stage, and I got hit on.
Yeah. It's really the whole constellation there.
It was a lot. There was, I think you went to the bathroom, and I was literally like sitting there, and this guy just like suddenly rushes to stage, and then like a minute later, some guy comes up to me and it's like shit-faced, completely shit-faced. He's like, I just want to tell you, you're fucking sexy, and just walks away. And I'm like, thank you. And I'm like, this is a lot of new information. And so like, I don't know what to expect. And it turns out there was more stage rushes throughout the night.
Yes, homosexuals at a Morrissey concert. I'm shocked. I tell you, shocked.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we had a nice time. Morrissey is more northern than I expected.
Really? You never heard him talk?
No, I had. I somehow forget every time. Then he opens his mouth again.
Is Northern more working class?
I mean,
I don't really
perhaps,
know.
Yeah,
He's not Scottish, right?
No.
Okay.
No, it's just a regional accent, and yeah, it probably has a certain connotation of a slightly more proletarian kind of vibe.
He had a lot of cool pictures. During his different songs, he would put pictures up, and one of them was the Yellow Vest in France, and then another one was Che Guevara, and he also did Prince Harry, who
standing
killed
over
a buffalo.
a dead buffalo.
There was less dead animals than I was promised. I feel like everyone...
Half the wines could be human cries. No, he didn't do Mita's murder, for the record.
Yeah.
He did do quite a bit of Smith stuff. So anyway, yeah, Vegas was great. We sat by the pool a lot.
They were less gay for the roles than our last trip.
Yeah.
It was actually like quite pleasant. Like if you had a drink in your hand, they weren't policing you.
That's indoors. Yeah. So indoors you were required to wear a mask, but outdoors you could do what you wanted. And that was great. And the casinos are back in full swing.
There was no stupid dividers.
No, the magical perspex barriers were not in place.
Yeah.
And I guess we're on day 5 of being back, so we got away with it, you know.
Is it really 5 days already?
I think so. 4, 5.
It's like a Monday and it's Thursday.
I can't count.
While we were there, someone wanted tips on how do you do Vegas right, because it turns out a lot of people don't actually know how to do Vegas right, or if they would like it because they don't gamble.
Well, I feel like what people do wrong about Vegas, which is very easy to do, is they like think that they have to have every piece of fun they're ever going to have in their life, every piece of debauchery, every hedonistic pleasure has to be packed into their 3 days in Vegas.
Yeah,
and that's the wrong way to do Vegas. Vegas must be done treat it like an island, like a tropical island, and like you're on island time. Get up late, stroll. Eat a little bit of food. Start drinking at breakfast if you want to.
Smoke inside.
Yeah, smoke indoors. Gamble for 18 hours straight. No breaks.
Or don't gamble. I think I gambled for like 10 minutes during the whole trip.
Yeah. I didn't. I did gamble a little bit. But
Degenerate.
Yeah. No, I think people just try and like do too much in Vegas. It's like, then sit by the pool. Drink more.
Yeah. Also, gay Vegas is good.
Yeah, Gaygus.
Yeah,
we call it in the business.
I know summer's almost over, but they have a fun gay pool party at the Luxor.
Yeah, I think that ends this week.
Does it?
Yeah.
Okay. And then Piranha, which we've been to before, it's a fun gay club.
Yeah,
and it's chill. They have hot dancers.
It's true. Yeah, so no, I think Vegas must be treated as. There's also a lot of interesting stuff off the strip, but don't do it because you're going to be way too drunk by breakfast time.
It's like Disneyland, like literally. There's cameras everywhere, so if someone's gonna like ruin your fun, it's instantly handled. It's not like, I don't know. I'm trying to give like
a cab, but I've got to say, casino bouncers, like casino security, showing up to eject like somebody being like threatening and belligerent is quite entertaining.
There was that one trip where you were at a table or like walking past a table, and this guy was like losing his shit over like because he was belligerent. I remember there was like 4 or 5 people came from all different points, and you never saw them. They just came out of nowhere and handled it, and it was like handled in like no time. It was beautiful.
Yeah, it's the perfect security state, complete surveillance, and a sort of unseen security force that
and no
is
guns.
always present. That's true.
Yeah.
No guns unless you're checking into the Mandalay Bay.
Abolish
for a country music
police
concert.
And replace them with Vegas security.
Casino security.
They're probably better educated.
Yeah, it's probably a harder bar to clear.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So anyway, I don't know.
It was great.
It was great. I'm noticing it's like winter is coming. To coin a phrase.
Fall is coming.
Before. Yeah. But that's basically the same as winter.
How dare you? It's far better. It's beautiful. There's more pumpkins than apples.
It's true. I'm just noticing, the days are a little cooler, a little shorter. Gets dark a little earlier.
I think it's just a phase. It'll come back to heat.
Yeah. No, we can keep this one going for another couple of weeks. It'd be nice.
Yeah. It was also weird going to Vegas because in Wisconsin, there's like no regulations for like really anymore for like individuals. So going back to like wearing a mask was just like a weird thing to deal with.
It was. I was like, yeah, this is odd.
This sucks. I just had a drink always, and I avoided it.
It's good, Sam. It's a local health regulation. That's the consensus of the experts. So it's good.
Yeah, I'm just glad I don't break out from masks. I'm lucky. I've never broken out from it.
do. I think this last year and a half, I've had more facial acne than I had since I was probably about like 15 years old.
Yeah.
So that's been fun.
Making you youthful, but like the youth no one actually wants to go back to.
Yeah. We'll get some braces to go with it or something.
Epstein would like it.
Good.
Yeah, I can say that he's dead.
He's dead, maybe.
Yeah,
because he killed himself or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I was just saying it because you can't do defamation of the dead. So, can you?
No.
Oh well, good.
Or at least they're not known to bring suit very often.
Yeah, we're not Britain.
Yeah, the Britain. Yeah, I'm sure in a British court, a dead person can sue you. Well, speaking of defamation of character,
yeah, Gian is a bad person, and we're ending Twink Rev, and I'm afraid of him. So this is the end of the episode.
So Chelsea Manning, former private first class, discharged dishonorably something, tweeted this morning.
Let me read it.
In all lowercase. I think I can do this one. You can do the response.
Okay.
So all lowercase here. Glenn Greenwald. I don't have $10,000 right now, but if I get it, I wanted to send it back to you from a donation you once did. I can't deal with this anymore. I'm terrified of you and everything you do. You're greedy, unprincipled, and I'm embarrassed for ever considering you a friend. And then goes on to say, last night during the floods, I decided that I'm no longer going to be afraid of saying what's on my mind anymore, or taking a stand from the people that I once considered allies, but who have chosen to bash, harass, humiliate, intimidate, and lie to get ahead. To those he has hurt, I'm sorry. I didn't say anything. I was scared, and that's my fault.
What is she afraid of? That like
that terrifying Jewish, lovely, sweet Jewish gay man.
That is hot.
Who donated $10,000 to her.
He's gonna have too many dogs, and he's gonna actually have a world war dog.
It's a world domination. Yeah. The it's America's creeping fascist threat, but the jackbooted thugs are just dogs, just thousands and thousands of dogs.
You can't be afraid of Glenn Greenwald. He's a vegan, and as a vegan, I know that's the least scary attribute.
Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot. Yeah, the very sweet Jewish gay vegan who's married to a Brazilian socialist.
With a dog shelter.
Who runs into a shelter for homeless dogs, who donated $10,000 of his own money to you in a time of need. You should be very afraid of this man. He's clearly terrifying. I'm terrified of you.
So scary.
So Chelsea Manning is off her rocker.
Yeah. I think she was pushed to do it because when she came out of prison, a lot of her community was a lot of the anarchist and like counterpoints liberal kind of sphere.
Yeah.
And they're all very vocal against Glenn Greenwald since he is mean to like the Democrats and goes on Tucker Carlson and stuff. And I mean, you could point out left wingers like Gray's people have been on Tucker Carlson, but these people also think they're like a sadist, like genocide denier.
Oh, they also call like Ben Norton and Max Blumenthal fascists. Yeah. So this is like, this stuck in my craw, particularly this morning, because I was sort of thinking like, if let's say you sort of took exactly the opposite tack to even the one that they say Glenn is doing. I don't think it's what he's doing, but they say, they accuse him of, well, he's pushing his audience to Tucker Carlson.
Yeah.
And that he's, shilling for conservative ideas and hiding creeping fascism. Well, let's just think about what would Chelsea Manning be tweeting about you if you were pushing everyone to go listen to Rachel Maddow or just read the fucking New York Times or whatever.
Yeah.
And you were apologizing for like American imperialism constantly, under a sort of identitarian banner, and perhaps you were just hiding like not even creeping, just absolutely dominant American neoliberalism.
Mm-hmm.
You'd be fine, right? Like just vote blue no matter who, and you get complete moral cover from this, right?
Yeah.
You just like vote for Biden, Kamala is my queen, and suddenly like you're freed from these accusations,
right?
Chelsea Manning is not terrified of you anymore. And I don't know. I just think it's what an incredibly sad spot to end up in with somebody, who I think did something very brave. I think the leaking was brave and courageous and worth doing. But holy shit, like it doesn't stop you from just being a shit-lib Democrat, like crypto Democrat, which is what she is because she's an anarchist.
Especially to like one of the few people who, like, because most people, like even the left, kind of stopped talking about whistleblowers as the Obama years went on.
Oh yeah,
it was like limited people like Abby Martin and like that kind of like independent media, maybe like Democracy Now! Before they became full like shit lib,
right?
And then like libertarians and like civil libertarians like Glenn, who like gave money. Oh, and Pamela Anderson, boss queen, but like gave money and kept calling out people that are still talking about like Julian Assange and Snowden and stuff, and it's like, okay, well, you're gonna be a dick to like the one person who's like there and actually gave their money and stuff.
Well, yeah, you can go into Glenn's response. Although I just want to point out, Chelsea Manning, just in case you were not worried enough about her state of mind, said something very recently, which I can't get the exact quote, but it's the
I got it.
If Ken Klippenstein had been around
in 2010, he would have been the recipient. Let's just put it that way. And it's talking about
Julian Assange. Yeah, I mean, how, like, keep in mind, Julian Assange is currently effectively is actually incarcerated now and has been de facto incarcerated for almost a decade now for effectively, those materials, the publication of those materials. I'm sorry, some disrespect to Ken Klippenstein, but if Ken Klippenstein had been around and received those materials, we would never know they existed.
Yeah.
I mean, And good God, like what, like who are you trying to ingratiate yourself to when you start singing the praises of Ken fucking Klippenstein, one of the least inspiring journalists working today?
Heavily like disrespectful to like just like the man who like helped release the information
right
to the public of these war crimes, like who's now in jail and has never like bowed out of like doing what he did. Right. It's like, oh well, I wouldn't have done it for him. It's like fuck you. Like I'm sorry. And also like if we're gonna being like unprincipled, like she ran as a Democrat after in like I think Baltimore or Burlington or one of those cities. And that's the party that like literally let her rot in solitary confinement in a military facility, like for almost 8 years, and then like it's just and they didn't say any jack shit when like she was sent back to prison, where she at least still had the respect to like not speak on part of like Julian Assange, but like maybe that was just to preserve herself. I don't know. Like,
well, yeah, but yeah, this is the thing is like, I am perfectly capable of holding two ideas in my head at once. One is Chelsea Manning did a very brave thing.
Yeah.
In terms of, you know, exposing war crimes. It is also true that Chelsea Manning is a total shit lib Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
And has become one of these like frothing Trump derangement kind of like fascism is around every corner. Oh God, got to do an Antifa. Like, I mean, and the thing is, there's, you know, what's funny here, right, is that as I say that, right, I'm able to hold both of those ideas simultaneously. Chelsea apparently is not able to think of Glenn, the kind of the person who was kind, for one, which I think is, you know, a political value I hold in higher regard than most. And then, you know, personally courageous in terms of publishing the Snowden leaks and everything, and many other things. With the idea that Glenn is not a Democrat.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot hold those two ideas concurrently as meaning, no, this person is I'm terrified of this person because they're not a Democrat. Yeah, Glenn's a civil libertarian and he hasn't really changed his views. We don't like, yeah. And like, I'd like to say I have an immense personal affection for Glenn. And think he's insightful and right about many things. I don't think we necessarily share politics, although it doesn't matter. Like, I mean, he's probably much more fine with capitalism than I would say I am.
Yeah.
But like, whatever. Like, because, you know, what are the political values that matter? You know, are you kind? Are you courageous? Do you speak your mind? Do you care about people?
Mm-hmm.
Are you willing to, you know, engage in sort of debate and argument and to express ideas, to listen to other ideas? Like, those are all like political values I share with Glenn. I think those are really important values. And like, fundamentally, I don't really care like what he does in the privacy of his own, you know, voting booth or political donation checkbook or whatever. It's not really important.
Yeah. Especially if you think like I don't think voting really matters anyways. Which one you vote
exactly.
For,
so that hence why I'm like, I also, you know, I don't think Glenn is a Republican. Just by virtue of, he's not. In fact, I mean, I can pretty categorically say that he's just not a Democrat. He also lives in Brazil.
Yeah, I think he's a citizen. Maybe.
I mean, it's like, you know, to the extent that if you look at the Brazilian candidates, he speaks in favor of pretty often. It's like Lula.
Yeah.
So, fascism, creeping fascism in America.
It's like social democracy, which is like not very different. The only difference is Glenn doesn't like simp for the military complex, and if they're run by Democrats, the woke CIA and all of these groups that you would think a person who's was like exposed suddenly is like simping for like the January 6th stuff, which was heavily like set up by like the FBI and stuff to push these groups.
Abolish prisons unless they're for the dangerous insurrectionists on January 6th. That's a not unfair paraphrase of Chelsea Manning, for the record.
No, it's not.
She's very, very into those January 6th rioters getting what's coming to them.
Also the COVID stuff. I mean, it's like, I think she's another thing. Like, and it's like Glenn doesn't disagree. Like, he's just like critical of like some of the power structures of it. And it's like, oh my God, it's so scary. He's not a quackpot. It's like, this is all actually the lizard people who are gonna kill us all.
Well, shall I get us taken off YouTube?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So all the vultures were coming out for. Actually, sorry, I'm going to tell the story after you actually read Glenn's response.
Okay, so
because it was good.
Yeah, people were still mad about it. Shitlibs. Glenn replied to Chelsea's first tweet and said, "Friendships that depend on political agreement were never friendships in quotations, just cynical transactions. When she was in prison trying repeatedly to kill herself, I was one of the only ones who visited, spent hours on the phone raising money for her. No good deed goes unpunished." Should I keep reading?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, sometimes people are nice to you as long as you're used to them and then provide them things they want, then turn on you when you can't or won't any longer. As long as you know you gave and defended them with the right motives, as I did, your conscience should be clean. Lots of people on the left, not all, but many, mistake friendships for political agreements such that when the political agreement erodes, for them, the friendship does too. Friendships that don't transcend politics or require a political agreement have no value. It goes on saying, while Julian Assange is rotting in prison, Chelsea Manning recently smeared him when he couldn't defend himself, announcing that if she had to do it over again, she would not have leaked to WikiLeaks. Maligning someone unjustly rotting in prison is not an attribute I value. And then he goes on, and then he shows...
God, wordy, Glenn. Save it for your fucking Substack.
And then he shows the grievance messages from Chelsea where she says, "Glenn, is Tucker Carlson fine? It's really, really, really off mark. TC is basically organizing as a Nazball demagogue. You're losing a lot of friends here. Whose side are you on?" That was probably the reason. And also, he shared that Chelsea Manning made an appearance at a pro-Trump gala, and there's also photos of her hanging out with Gavin McInnes.
McInnes, yeah.
From like the Proud Boys and stuff. So it's like really double standards, and I think it's pure power play. There's not like genuine like fear or anything.
Let's go back to the line. "To those he has hurt, I'm sorry I didn't say anything. I was scared, and that's my fault." No, it's not. And I lost my train of thought. What was I going to say?
You were going to get us banned from YouTube.
Oh yeah. Just as a worked example of like this sort of democratic, like yet again, not being a Democrat is the crime here.
Mm-hmm.
Talking to Tucker Carlson or whatever. So I'm going to say the magic word. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm gonna see if I can do this without saying the thing that will get us banned. So there's a drug for which somebody won a Nobel Prize.
Yeah.
And it is used variously for horse deworming.
Let's just call it the smallpox vaccine, but there's a winking eye to it.
Okay, yeah.
The word starts with an I.
The smallpox vaccine.
Yeah.
So I am a pretty sort of I'm a skeptic when it comes to a lot of like medical claims. I did a bit of sort of epidemiological like analysis stuff in my younger days. So like I don't like medical quackery. I think it like plays upon people's fears and their desire to be healthy, which is a very reasonable desire. So when I saw how mad people were getting about conservatives or whatever pushing the smallpox vaccine,
it's really funny.
Yeah. I was like, oh, it must be bullshit. I had to assume this was just like chuds, the same people who are selling their like Alex Jones, like supplements and shit. I was like, oh, this is the same crew. Today I fell down a rabbit hole where I went and read almost every systematic review that has been published on the smallpox vaccine. And a systematic review, for those who don't know, is kind of the gold standard of medical evidence. How do we know if a medical intervention works or not? And what you do is you take all the studies that have, used a small group of people or tried a placebo control group or done a case control where you compare two different groups of people, whatever. And then they basically try and use statistics to say, is this a real effect or are these studies like flukes, right? Which, if you take one study, there's some chance it might be a fluke.
Yeah.
You just call it the 10 people who reacted well to the smallpox vaccine. And so the current consensus on the smallpox vaccine, contrary to what I had, as I say, as an idiot in a hurry, not paying any attention, I would have thought that this was just a completely debunked thing. It is not.
No, I looked into it a little bit, but not in the same way because I'm at this point scientifically illiterate.
Okay, so yeah, and as I say, and even if you take out some studies on the smallpox vaccine, that have some dubious data for sure, and there are keep in mind there's quackery here.
Yeah.
If you take those out, there's still a statistically significant improvement in smallpox cases, and the deaths that you see from smallpox, and recovery times and need for certain interventions. I just thought that was fascinating, and so keep in mind what people were, because the vultures were moving in on Glenn today. Because once somebody takes a shot, they're like, oh, all the blue checks come out, right? And they're like, I never liked that guy anyway. And one of the things they were going over after Glenn and Michael Tracy over,
and Joe Rogan.
Yes, well, particularly Joe Rogan had maybe kicked this one off. Was and I'll be careful with my wording here. Joe Rogan was for saying he had taken the smallpox vaccine.
Yeah.
And then Michael Tracy and Glenn Greenwald had been lumped together for just not being sort of a priori against the smallpox vaccine. Both of whom I don't think either of them are on the record as saying I think this is a good treatment or I think this should be used or whatever. It's merely and this is kind of what Glenn does and what he does so well is noticing. You're like, wait, why is this entire group of people saying one thing that they that we can see isn't true?
Yeah.
Right. And that's what he does. He grabs that the hint of that and he yanks on it and he writes really incredible pieces of sort of journalistic investigation on that basis. And that's what he's always done and that's what we love him for. His own personal politics are actually not in that investigation. So he has not written on the subject, but I think he has tweeted words to the effect of wait, why the fuck are you all so weird about the smallpox vaccine? Why are you so mad about this?
Yeah.
And so anyway, so I was, I consider myself chastised if you'd asked me yesterday, I would have said, oh, the smallpox vaccine, that's bullshit.
Yeah, I think you told me that a week ago or something, and I was like,
well, I honestly hadn't investigated beyond some headlines, which are people are dying from the smallpox vaccine, or the Poison Control Center has treated dozens of smallpox vaccine overdoses.
Well, I think if it does show to be an effective treatment, the smallpox vaccine, that it kind of destroys the power over other vaccines or being
over a vaccine, yeah.
Because if you can get a long, I believe it's a long used
correct. It's the smallpox vaccine is pretty safe in humans at doses that have been studied therapeutically.
And you can't just the patent is completely gone for it because it's old.
It's old.
So it could take away this lifetime of all these renewals of shots and here's a drug that we can't make massive profits off of this smallpox vaccine. Yeah.
I don't know.
But it's
I don't know if it's actually, more effective than say other vaccines. It's that's a claim for which there is no evidence.
I'm not saying it, but if it does,
Well, yeah. But it's also, I think it just got integrated into a culture war thing immediately as everything does because people are still fucking and the libs were meant to get better when Biden won, and they didn't. They got worse.
Called it.
Yeah, because they want complete ideological conformity, right, at this point. And so the problem is that the smallpox vaccine became a symbol of, in the same way that people are getting very animated about whether Pfizer or Moderna COVID vaccines, just to pick a random example unrelated to smallpox, would be better or whatever. And that became a whole fucking I don't know, yet another way for people to basically root out the pretenders in their lives. No fake friends, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, you would dare to get a Moderna vaccine. Well, that means you're not really my friend.
You're the Johnson & Johnson. Why don't you trust the science? Like,
yeah, no.
That's like the worst one. And I've seen so many videos and stuff of like goofy, like liberal videos. And it's like, oh, the good one's the Pfizer. And then it's Moderna. It's like, it's like always like, and there's like this SNL skit where it's like the sisters. And then it shows up like the really like, you know, kind of crazy one. That's Johnson & Johnson. It's like,
oh, what a burn.
It's like, whoa, like, okay, congratulations. You're just like a bunch of technocrat losers. Like,
yeah. So what's funny, right, is the media kind of are incredibly complicit in all of this, or they may just honestly be the originators of it. But certainly the idea that the smallpox vaccine that starts with an I, like it has a whole mechanism of action. Like it is truly has been shown it to have antiviral effects in many different viruses that have been studied over the last 50 years.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. It's not woo-woo. It's not a supplement. It is a medicine.
Yeah.
And the reason it happens to work really well as this antiparasitic is because it turns out to have this particular mechanism of action that can be replicated elsewhere. And like, but like, yet again, keep in mind that we would be banned off YouTube if we gave you the name of the smallpox vaccine we're talking about.
Yeah.
If I just say it,
right.
This video will not be allowed on YouTube. And why? Because the science, quote unquote, which yet again, I told you, I just went and read all the systematic reviews, including the one published in Nature and the Journal of Therapeutic Physiology, I believe. And so that is the science, like the established, like the peer-reviewed science, the best scientific standard we have is in a systematic review, peer-reviewed, does not say what the New York Times says.
Yeah.
But the New York Times can post all day about the smallpox vaccine chuds, overdosing or whatever, and that there's no basis for it. And public health officials can tweet out anything they want about the smallpox vaccine.
Yeah. These are all the same publications that'll like proudly share like goop and like about like jade crystal eggs for your pussy and like
which work. I have no reason to believe those don't work. If we want to stay up on YouTube, Sam, you're gonna have to use a code if you want to talk about the jade pussy eggs.
Or like chiropractics or something, like all these things that are kind of like quack. And it's like,
let's go with dental floss if you want to talk about the jade pussy eggs again, because I don't want to get taken down.
Okay. But it's like all these other things are fine. Like we can allow all this woo woo, but then like we're gonna be like, oh, this is woo woo, even though it's like scientifically been studied for much longer and like actually has plenty of uses.
People won Nobel Prizes for this particular.
Yeah, it's like a
considered one of the most sort of incredible vaccines ever developed. In terms of its the Nobel Prize, which was granted in 2015, has a it's a glowing encomium to what a giant boon to public health this was, particularly around parasites.
Mm-hmm.
And as I say, this is not to say that the smallpox vaccine is necessarily right for you. And I'm not a doctor. Don't take my fucking medical advice. Just it's more that to say, isn't it interesting when sort of orthodoxy crosses over into actual like catechism? I mean, it's like you may not. This is canon law. You cannot say otherwise anymore.
Right.
How silly, right? And you're a bad person if you even question the doctrine. Like, and the doctrine is that the smallpox vaccine is only for racist white people in the South, and that if you're a good person, you go take a Pfizer or Moderna vaccine like you're told.
Yeah.
And that makes you a good person. And it's like, well, sure. I mean, those vaccines, there's data to support the efficacy of those, and go do that. That sounds good. But you wouldn't know that, right? You would never be allowed to hear that statement if I didn't say smallpox vaccine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's also funny because like these people who like pretend to be concerned, I think just don't want anyone to break the line because they view it as like the moral standard of taking these vaccines over the smallpox vaccine because they don't want to offer an alternative. I mean, they honestly probably don't care if like the people that aren't taking it die. They probably are happy in the same way they were cheering it on throughout the entire
Joe Rogan
pandemic.
dying.
Well, it's like, remember, like all these people were like, "Oh, I'm glad all these states have people dying." So
Oh yes, the
red
boomer
states-
remover. Remember that?
Yeah, and it's just like, okay, you don't actually care. Like, just concerned about, like, oh, the people that aren't vaccinated and stuff. It's like you don't care, and you don't want another alternative to be available because if that means they don't need to take your precious like mega corporation like vaccine, like it's like you can't actually talk about like any of like people having negative reactions. Like it's not allowed in like
Right. But keep in mind these like there's a difference between people who are actual like financial stooges for these things. Like put it this way, if you're a major Pfizer corporation shareholder and you're spinning this bullshit, I get it. I think that's evil and malicious, but like but I understand why you behave this way. What's fascinating to me is these the kind of like your urban liberal who has been so totally co-opted into a culture war of major Pfizer shareholders against like major Johnson and Johnson shareholders or something like that. They like literally believe themselves to be perfect little god warriors, and it has a whole moral component to it,
right.
and that's what's so fucking insane to me is truth doesn't matter.
No.
It's about right and wrong, and what is right is trusting the science, no matter what the science actually says, and then to be an evil, bad, unperson is to go on Tucker Carlson or use the real name of the smallpox vaccine. And the people who think this way control pretty much all our media.
Yeah.
They certainly control our big tech companies. Through employee pressure groups that want more censorship of smallpox vaccine conspiracies, and basically have complete dominion over our political apparatus. And then they love to cry online and say they're terrified of Glenn Greenwald. Like, what the fuck? Like, why? Like, what does Chelsea Manning have to be afraid of?
Right.
She is literally like as mainstream as you can get. Every instrument of our government, every apparatus of our government, and every fucking social institution we have agrees with her.
There's so many of her now where it's like former radicals or people that kind of like push the envelope on like capitalism or the state or whatever are just fully complicit. I mean, Noam Chomsky is for one. Adolf Reed posted some really cringe article.
Nathan J. Robinson, former radical Nathan J. Robinson.
I mean, even people like Angela Davis nowadays, or who's the people who blew up shit.
The Weather Underground.
Yeah, they're all like lawyers for like
Bill Ayers or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like
So
Obama's,
people,
buddy.
And I think this is another thing that people get up. They see him now post cringe and like, well, they've always been bad. Versus like being like maybe their conditions change as the world changed and they maybe changed wealth status or class. But like a lot of people are quite wealthy now because they have media and personality careers and they're comfortable. So like they don't have to like hold the same views anymore. Doesn't mean all the old stuff they did was bad. It just means people change and we have to hold them to the standard they are in the current condition.
Right. Very well said. I mean, that's the funny thing about the New Left, right, was that it was this perfect template or a perfect kind of conveyor belt. You could ride from radical youth, long hair, don't care, burn the bra, ban the bomb, whatever, paint some fucking flowers in your hair. Yeah. And then you could kind of just ride this conveyor belt of like, oh, I'm yes, of course I'm a radical. I've read Marx. I was part of a Maoist group in college or whatever. Well, you become an investment banker, become a landlord, move into the upper echelons of the corporate world, and just continue to trade on this currency, or become a tenured professor.
Yeah,
and like
NGO leaders,
right? Yeah, start an NGO, and so like the fact that you could. Like the new, what distinguished the New Left from the old left in some ways, right, was the ability to pull that party trick. And it wasn't an intentional act of deception on the part of the people doing it. It's more like it was structurally set up that way to enable this.
Yeah.
It's a de-radicalization tactic in some sense. And so, what old Caleb Maupin, refers to as the synthetic left, I think is like literally the left when there's not even anybody who's not on that conveyor belt left. It's like, it's just those people.
Yeah.
It's all that's left is the conveyor belt. It's why people are so jaded about the left and and I think, people are sloppy about their terminology when they talk about the left in this way, but I see it too, right? I mean, it's like at some point you're like, wait, this is all funhouse mirrors and fakery. There's like, is there anybody real in here?
Right.
Because honestly, if all your fucking heroes and all the sacred cows, like the sacred cows are being milked at the NGO by the heroes, like it's
funded by the Ford Foundation and open societies. Like,
you're like, what? Like, wait, like what? If that wasn't the real left, then where is it? Because like, who the fuck is it?
It's
like,
dead.
Well, yeah. I mean, to borrow a phrase we haven't used a while, there is no left. I mean,
yeah.
or like, I think if there is a left, and I hope there is, because I still, for reasons that might be sentimental at this point and nostalgic, I mean, I still consider myself part of the left.
Yeah.
The people who I think I find inspiring or interesting are not the people who are on a conveyor belt to inevitable wealth and power and an NGO job or tenure at a university. I mean, they're the ones, I guess, just trying to live their lives and do the best they can in their communities. And like that, to me, that's the left.
Yeah, there's so few, I feel like, in the U.S. I mean, most of them that I have any admiration for have probably been on the podcast or are hopeful guests in the future.
I have in my hand a list of all of the actual genuine leftists in America right now.
But it's kind of sad because like you look to the dead who died and how it died and like what their contributions were, or get to look abroad where the conditions are different and they don't have the same deeply incited like cringe liberal infusement of their Marxism or their radicalism or whatever they call themselves.
They've banned Twitch.
Yeah.
No Twitch communists.
Shall we go to our next topic? I mean, this is another area where this culture war really predominates. So recently there's been a lot of upheaval because SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the U.S., said they will not be refused before midnight when a Texas law prohibiting most abortions after 6 weeks was going to take effect. Didn't happen. So everyone's like losing their minds because like people are it's like one of the few cultural issues that divide the bourgeois parties, like the Democrats and the Republicans.
It's kind of the foundational disagreement between the two.
Yeah,
like all Democrats must be pro-abortion and all Republicans must be anti-abortion. That's their.
Yeah.
In fact, it's almost a better analytical tool to understand American partisan politics than just about anything else.
Right. So everyone's upset about this, including people on the left primarily, which I'm going to use as like the broad term of like everyone who calls themselves the left
liberals,
pretty much everyone, even like those who call themselves communists or kind of lost their shit. And it's kind of funny because to me it's like, I mean, I'm more skeptical of the narrative. I think that the Democrats aren't doing this out of the goodness of their hearts. I think it's also to like control people's bodies, women's bodies. I mean, because it is. And you both want to kind of are just doing the Democrat line. You must do with the Democrats because they're the ones who are going to preserve abortion.
They're the good people. Yeah. Well, that's keep in mind, that's been a Democratic refrain since the rise of like the moral majority in the 80s. Is like, sure, you might not like us, but we're the ones who will protect Roe v. Wade.
Yeah.
And it's why it's such an article of faith for Democrats to get elected. And you'll notice Democrats who like go into like move up in office, suddenly their views evolve.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Biden, famously pretty Catholic, pretty anti-abortion in his time.
Yeah.
Suddenly, just at some point along his political journey in the Democratic Party, the rise to the top, just found in his heart to believe that that's actually a personal issue, as a moral conscience. He supports abortions now.
Yeah, they actually asked it recently. They're like at one of the press conferences, and it was like, so Joe Biden is very Catholic. And Catholics, the church doesn't accept abortion. How does he reconcile that? And she's like, the speaker person, I don't know her name. I don't care. The redhead. You know what I'm talking about?
No idea what you're talking
The
about.
one who like answered all the questions to media. I don't know her name.
The press secretary?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't know her name.
Sure.
And she's like, basically like, well, of course we support women's right to choose. And it doesn't matter to you. You've never had to have an abortion or anything. It's kind of like, how dare you, man, talk about this? And it's like, that's a very reasonable question. It wasn't like...
No, asking what the sitting president of the United States thinks about an issue that apparently a lot of people find very animating.
Yeah.
Feels like a reasonable question, right? But no, you get scolded for asking.
Also, being Catholic was like, I feel like part of his marketing to like try to appeal.
Well, it certainly was. He toned it down a little bit this time around for the presidency, because yet again he's running as a Democrat in a general election, as opposed to where he's sort of been, when he was the anti-crime pro-Clinton firebrand. Never saw a war he didn't like. I mean, you would have mistaken him for George W. Bush,
right?
In terms of the that sort of like God is on my side, my strong faith guides me, like whatever. I mean, the guy's an empty suit, so like who knows whether he ever believed any of it. It almost doesn't matter, right? The faith, very publicly expressed faith for American politicians is like always this weird thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Obama's Christianity is very funny.
Yeah, I think
didn't have a church, but like if he did, it would be Christian.
Yeah, I think it's also just really funny because you have a lot of people who like claim to be like for the working class, and yet fully just tout the like ruling class's line on the topic of either side. Like this whole debate's kind of like ridiculous because you have the primarily like religious aspects of the right who are just holding on to like old feudal views where like having lots of kids was good for like feudalism, and that's why the church was like against abortion. And then as the capitalism rise, you had things like Malthusianism and neo-Malthusianism, which we see much more today, because like having a lot of kids, it turns out, isn't actually an advantage to the ruling class anymore. Now they're actually kind of a burden because you have more unemployed people, you have more ills attributed to underemployed and unemployed,
people
and
have to take care of children.
Yeah,
that's expensive. Good God.
I remember like it was like a TYT or something like video years back when I watched them, and they're talking about how like abortion actually reduced crime and like primarily like New York. And you think
that's the Freakonomics argument.
I think about it now, and I'm like, holy fuck, that's like it is racist. Like when you see like Black conservatives kind of call it out, like this is because like instead of actually like acknowledging this is because of social conditions that we need to change, it's like, oh no, we're gonna get abortion and we're just gonna like stop them having kids. You're just doing like what Planned Parenthood did in the beginning today, but like
it's
as woke.
Yeah.
It's woke because like, oh, we gotta help the women. They're poor and they can't have babies. And it's like there's no desire to change social conditions like free childcare, job security, like all these kind of things that would make having children in a family no longer an economic or like lifestyle burden. They don't care. They don't want you to have children. Like it's kind of like eugenics on the working class again.
Right. Well, yeah, and I mean, the idea that sort of two people who probably haven't impregnated anybody. I don't know, Sam. You?
No, I can't say I have.
Okay, yeah, I don't think I have. We'll find out in a few years. No, I mean, sort of discussing this issue, right? There's sort of an apologia already about the idea that to be a man and speak on this issue is wrong, which I only call out to, I guess, talk about the fact that like the idealized image, right, of abortion in America in the 21st century is a sort of a strong woman with full agency making a choice that, you know, and it's a choice made in a vacuum, a perfect vacuum, free of pressures, and it's about, do I want to carry this you know, pick your term, this fertilized zygote or whatever, or this baby to term,
parasite,
and like the what that does, right? What that imagery does is turn it into like an individual woman making a moral choice, as opposed to like most of the time making an economic choice. And then you know, I think I have perhaps a like, I don't know if this is me being a fence sitter, but I have a weak defense of abortion as something that people need access to, sometimes. And then the only thing that then turns my stomach is the rhetoric around abortion.
Yeah.
The pro-abortion stuff, right? It's because it's honestly like there's a certain callous, like, this is cutting off a mole type stuff, which I'm like, why? Like, well, it's you know, it's not. And you don't have to sort of start assigning spiritual significance to, you know, clusters of cells. But also you could probably avoid using terms like clusters of cells and argue about fetal heartbeats, right? If to not seed the ground that you don't care at all about the idea of an unborn person.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, there's a general like sort of lack of perspective on like, I think there's a huge amount of hypocrisy on the part of those who are sort of religious conservatives who are like very concerned about the unborn child. But like, and this is a trite stand-up bit from forever, right? Of every hack lib comedian, it says, well, yeah, but they don't give a fuck about them once they're born. So if you wanted to prevent abortions, you know, you could do any kind of soft social democratic reforms, and you would actually reduce them. You see countries like, you know, Denmark or Sweden or whatever, you know, yada, 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 trot out the example to say when people have the economic means to have children, they often choose to have children at a higher rate.
Yeah.
Contraceptives are not perfect. And honestly, alcohol and cocaine are hell of a drug. So, you know, and it's just shit happens, man. You know, look, if you want child support, I'm not on this podcast.
I mean, even in like the social democracy there's still like heavy burdens, like the cost of housing and stuff for having children. And cause like housing in a lot of these places like Iceland and stuff is expensive still.
Well, certainly in Denmark, it's largely socialized housing.
Yeah.
So
but I mean,
it helps. That's why their birth rates are much higher than other parts of Europe, say.
I think they're like one of the highest in Europe.
They are. They're very fertile people.
Yeah. But I'm kind of like you. Like, I think people misconstrue. Like, I'm not saying ban abortion under capitalism. I mean, that's extremely stupid and wrong. I think
some people need them. That's fine. And like, it's
especially
fine.
now, like, no one's material conditions are changing, and like, I don't know. No, right now, I'm like, of course, should keep people legal, but we need to focus on the real solution, which is changing the material conditions for everyone. And also, like, I'm not gonna like cheer on the like pro like abortion like rhetoric like you talk about, where it's like these are parasites and actually having children is bad, and they use the environment now, and like even like when you're like kind of in like sex ed, which is pretty much just like nonsense. They don't teach you anything to actually like not get pregnant, but it's like
teach you how to find the G spot.
It treats having children as like the worst thing. It's like worse than like having an STI too. I feel like when I was being taught,
pregnancy,
it's
teen
like,
pregnancy is the worst thing that could happen to you.
It's like it's only bad because of the society we live in, making it unbearable. Like it's not always been that case, even for like, I'm not saying teenage pregnancies, because I think it's bad, but like if it is to happen, prior societies had means to actually take care of all the children and they can still get educated. Like, do you think there was no like even in Europe, they get educated still because they have childcare, right? And we don't.
To quote one of our greatest women leaders, Hillary Rodham Clinton, it takes a village.
Yeah.
And that's what we've done, right? And so the Social Pressures Act, what we've done is to take away the village that would help to raise children. And so, and the reasons we've done that is because, as you say, it doesn't make you a useful labor unit to capital.
Yeah.
You can't work in the Amazon warehouse if you're busy, breastfeeding a child. And so all of these, very kind of dark Malthusian, there's just too many babies, antinatalist shit comes. That's post hoc. I mean, that is downstream of the idea that people having babies is not useful to capital, is not profitable.
Right.
And then it comes with, the Freakonomics argument, which is that Roe v. Wade led to the drop in crime.
Oh my God. Disgusting.
Which, so I'm trying to remember if I can track this. I did read Freakonomics many years ago. I think their idea was that, lead paint caused the spike, and then Roe v. Wade meant there were fewer unborn children that unwanted children. Sorry, there were fewer unwanted children, and that led to better. So the funny thing is that the economic argument for abortion would surely be saying well, why are these children unwanted? It's because a child represents destitution for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So
it's so expensive.
Yeah, I mean, it limits your ability to work if you are pregnant, say, if you decide you're going to try and raise a child. So people say, well, you could adopt, or it's, well, no, you can't. You're pregnant and you're kind of fucking useless for a while.
Yeah.
Then it's also socially constructed, right, is what it means to be a pregnant, potentially, unwed single teen mother, all these things. And what we do in the same way that we do this with the OnlyFans cam girls get mushed in together with, the most downtrodden street walking prostitutes. And we say these are sex workers. We sort of pretend there's a monolithic version of why somebody might want to access an abortion.
Yeah, girl boss versus poor woman.
Well, and what we do is we freely trade off between this would harm my economic prospects right now, and then cases of incest, rape, or something. I don't necessarily think. I do think the idea of bodily autonomy does apply in some sense. But we're all still sitting there arguing about symptoms or things that are many degrees downstream of the causes here, which is to say that if what you want is to reduce it to a moral argument made in a vacuum, then you kind of economically have to create a vacuum around the decision to have a child.
Right.
And and this is where I guess I get squeamish, is I do believe that many people would choose to have children that are otherwise aborted if all economic circumstances or economic pressures were removed from the question. I think many people would be like, okay, I'm pregnant. Okay, I can support this child. I will not become homeless. I won't lose my job. I could raise this child, and then okay, and they probably will. The problem is that's such a luxury position, and so you have people writing their fucking Vox.com op-eds or whatever from their dumb email job work from home situations, basically doing the moral calculus for other people, and fuck them.
Well, even I remember in college talking to some other people in the feminist group on campus. When you talk to them, they're like, oh, I'm very pro access to abortion and stuff. But then you ask them, oh, if you got pregnant, would you get one? Like, oh, I wouldn't feel comfortable about it. Because people actually despite being told endlessly kids are bad and they're these evil parasites that drain the mother's energy and are going to make their lives horrible, which is very sick to talk about. I think it's extremely disgusting to talk about, but it's even though people who are the most radicalized into this kind of neo-Malthusian bourgeois thinking also oh, I don't feel comfortable about this, but also these are the same people who will shame people who talk about like their abortions and like the psychological trauma. Like they're all
They
for,
weren't happy about it. Yeah.
they're all for like mental health and healthcare and access to that. But let's never talk about the mental health aspects or even like health aspects after abortion, which isn't always like 0% clean. Like it still has like its toll. Like that's a big thing done to people, even though it's been safer than it was in like the 70s.
Yeah,
like,
and that's good. Like, and it's good. It's safe. And,
Yeah.
you know, that's the point. It's another one of these things where anytime you see something where we're all meant to feel one way in order to be considered sort of good people, right? The harms of that actually accrue to those who honestly like might just have some misgivings.
yeah.
And it's like, why do we all have to think one way here? And I almost feel like people being a little bit more reasonable, and a little more empathetic, and a little more human. Like we are, you know, keep in mind that like it's very deeply baked into our brains to have thoughts about children, like to be
Yeah.
like it's about the entire propagation of our species, right? The impulse that I think is in sort of all of us to some degree, yet again, to quote feminist girl boss Hillary Clinton, it takes a village. You know, we're a group mammal species. We do, like, if the normal person finds a strange child they've never met before wandering on the streets alone, they will care for that child.
Right.
Do you, like, is that just social conditioning? Like, no, we're literally kind of, you know, it's our species, it's propagation of our species. We're caring for the young, right? If you find a little baby bird on the street, you pick it up and you're going to look after it. Like, this is just so deeply baked into us that I think what gets so lost in this is that the people who have, through some intellectual process, decided like, no, if you're having any emotional response to this, you're actually a bad person. I think you're losing the plot there. Everyone's going to have feelings on this because it is about a kind of very deeply ingrained biological process about the care for our young.
Yeah.
The care for the most vulnerable, and the care for our species. And so all you're arguing about is where you draw a line on what is, you know, quote unquote, our young.
Mm-hmm.
And the logic that says you don't get a say in this is the same one that say, if I see a parent hitting their child on the street, you saying that's not my business? Like, of course it is. It's a child. It's a goddamn child being harmed. Like, so the thing I think that people who are very like rabidly like pro-abortion, it's just cells, miss about the anti-abortion argument is that the people who are just drawing a line literally a few weeks earlier than you and saying it's as though somebody is trying to murder a child on the street in front of them. Like, that's how they see it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's necessarily the most rational rendering the situation, but like, it misses the point to just call them backwards rubes or say that they don't understand the science or that it's a bodily autonomy thing. It's like, well, okay, but you understand why it's a very sincerely held position that is pretty deeply baked into us as humans.
And we have the same response when we see things like, you know, a parent denying their child like healthcare because of religious views, and no one knows the child, but we have such a deep response to care for the most vulnerable. I think the same reason it's like kind of like not comparing people to animals, but like people have a deep response when you see an animal or like something.
Yeah, an animal in distress.
Something very frail and like innocent. That's your desire is to care for and protect it, even if you have no formal connection. Like we're a collective species. We're not all individuals. We're not Margaret Thatcher's like non-society. We are,
and yet we live in a society.
It's also like why it's annoying when you have people like not able to discuss. Or like they try to prevent you from having a discussion. It's like, because you can't have a baby. It's like, okay, well, do women who lost that ability not get to talk about it anymore? Like, who really gets to say when it's like, we should care about society as a whole? Like, I don't want any prostitutes, but I care about ending the prostitution industry because that's bad for all of society and the women involved. It's like, but it's kind of like that kind of thing.
Right.
Like,
this is not misfiring empathy or compassion. This is actually the direct purpose of like our psychological ability to feel compassion or empathy is about, you know, protecting our group and our vulnerable and like caring for others. It's what makes life a sort of rich tapestry. And so that's why I just get so, as I say, you know, I personally happen to actually fall in the idea that, you know, access to abortion is important and should be allowed and should be medically safe and et cetera, et cetera. It's the callousness with which people treat those who literally are like parsing the world in only the slightest different way and rendering them an enemy. And we, as I say, we have our entire political formation in the US is basically drawn along the lines whether you think life begins at sort of 24 weeks or 16 weeks.
Yeah.
That's the entire political question before us. And like, because if, you know, yeah, as I say, it's if the child is 1 day old and you try to do that to it, everyone's outraged. You try and do it a few days earlier, a few weeks earlier, you know, suddenly the whole calculus changes. Like people flip on a dime and they're moral calculus. And I think it's just not fair to those who feel very sincerely that something else is going on there. It's like, yeah, I don't think they're right, but I also don't think they're misguided. I think they're just parsing the world a little bit differently. And unfortunately, right, there's a whole NGO complex around this specific issue, and it's a political litmus test.
Planned Parenthood.
Well, yeah, of course. As opposed to, right, if you really felt animated about this issue, then I would hope that particularly those who are sort of anti-abortion, right, would invest into the idea of like, you can, believe me, you can stop most of those abortions, and it doesn't involve picketing abortion clinics. It actually involves like providing the economic basis for people to choose to have children, which truly many people will choose to have children, given the option if they don't have to choose between that and a life that is stable.
Also, lots of people, majority still have like unplanned babies. Like I have lots of friends, and like all of theirs were kind of like surprises, and they were happy.
Happy little accidents.
They were happy. Like, you know what I mean? Like people just kind of like, oh, well, I wasn't planning it, but I'm not sad. And their families are happy because like people like children and babies, and they like having new generations to come because it feels like you're contributing to the future. Like, I don't know. It's
and when my adult children turn up in a few more years, I'll greet them as liberators.
I love it.
Anyway, China.
Yeah, China. So they're also in the news. I mean, they're always in the news, but now it's kind of like a fun
enemy
thing.
number one.
They're having their own Gamergate, like a more interesting one.
I don't think it's. I don't know if I would draw the Gamergate. It's a different.
Oh,
gamer.
it's just against the gamers. It's not about feminism. Sorry.
It's not about ethics and video game journalism.
Yeah. So China's recently released a new restriction on video games, primarily online video games. I don't think it's personal, like PS3 players or whatever they play.
Sure.
It's online video games, and they're limiting minors to 3 hours per week, according to CGTN. And basically, they're enforcing it through a real name registration and login, which is kind of like universal through their internet system. And it's basically to, I think, cut down on what they call the spiritual opium. And I think probably also like it has to do with the alienation and the strength of like tech culture on the youth.
Look, my take on this is my body, my choice. And if I want to spend 19 hours per day chugging back sugary caffeinated drinks and playing online video games, that is my right.
Okay, well, I'm actually, I know I'm a big critic of like nanny state, but in this case, I'm quite for it because I spend a lot of time around gamer people, and I think it's definitely an issue to the moral fabric of society because we live in a society, and children are also vulnerable to influence. And I also think video game culture is really bad for like, not because like, well, bad for like feeling involved in a broader sphere.
Well, I mean, I think it's important. The reporting on this all sort of made it sound like the sort of the impotent American version of social engineering, where we would be saying, hey Sam, you are not allowed to play video games for 3 days, more than 3 hours per week or whatever. Not what's going on here.
Yeah.
What they are limiting is the ability for these online video game companies that charge money and profit from this kind of online attention. They're limiting their ability to profit from it.
Yeah. Because
they regard the way they are making profits to be harmful, which, yes, they absolutely unequivocally are. It is a symptom of alienation, and it's also it generates alienation.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of, people are kind of treating it as a special, like, unique thing. But over, like, the last, like, I would say 6 months, China's been doing a lot of cracking down on things, primarily that contribute to the vast inequality within the country after market liberalization. I mean, they've heavily cracked down on things like private tutoring, because that gives an unfair advantage to more well-off people. And they've cracked down more on, like, they've nationalized a bunch of, like, giant corporations. Like, I think Jack Ma's companies got taken over.
Did Alibaba finally get taken out? Good.
I believe so. And then like other things that are housing stuff, they're actually cracking down to basically shift housing away from financial speculation to back to being like a non-commodity, which is kind of like surprising how quick all of this is coming out again.
Well, yeah, and just to reinforce the point, right, is that in the US and kind of in the English-speaking world in general, your attention is traded as a commodity.
Yes.
And some of the largest corporations on Earth have been built about monetizing your attention. In any other sector of the economy, it's actually quite acceptable to regulate how people can profit from a commodity. We don't think it's strange that somebody can't just, dig for coal in the middle, or like strip mine coal in the middle of a national park. That's
bad.
Yeah, that's that's normal, right?
Yeah.
Or the idea that a government could exercise restraint over the ways in which people profit, or the ways in which corporations particularly profit, and the effect it has on society, ecology, people, health, et cetera, right? That's a normal thing. So what's funny is that, like, the fight we're having, and when I say we, I mean those of us not in China, with our tech companies, is actually a rather different one. We've already granted the premise that they have a complete monopoly right to your attention, and there is no business practice they can engage in that we will say no to. Your attention is theirs. You just get to, as a consumer in the market, you get to make a consumer choice about which of these small number of corporations you give your online, or your attention to. What we've instead decided is that their conduct of they might accidentally show you something about, say, a smallpox vaccine. And that's really where we need to crack down on them. Because once you're already in this monopoly, or sort of, I guess, technically a sort of duopoly or whatever arrangement of, like, media properties that you can choose from to give all your attention to, which they are monetizing fully, we really, really just need the employees of those companies need to rise up and make sure that you're not seeing too many Joe Rogan videos or something. Like, that's what matters. China's taking a different tack, which is actually not to say, clearly they also have views about content, and have a very, very different attitude towards content regulation, I might call it euphemistically. But this is not the same fight. This is not like wow, you're taking away my internet freedoms.
Yeah.
It's actually saying, you predatory corporation who is attempting to profit off a particular kind of commodification that we regard as actually socially harmful, in the same way that, like, vaping companies marketing to children resulted in some crackdowns and changes to how they were regulated. It's the same, and I think it should be regarded as the same largely. I mean, this is like,
Right.
you've no idea how cynical on, you know, competition for the sort of like attention economy is. It's a science. There are thousands of people working at this moment to figure out how to get you to click one extra link.
Right.
And so, you know, look at one extra ad, scroll for an extra 1 minute to see some more ads. Like that's the apparatus that bombards you every day. And so the idea that a state might regulate that is not bad to me.
What's also interesting, because like a few days later, I think it was like today, South China Morning Post shared on a bunch of other Chinese media, a boycott kind of on like entertainment culture, or like, and restrictions on entertainment culture, to kind of revert it to what they call a more patriotic and socialist kind of line. And there's mentions of overly entertaining entertainers and sissy idols. And these are their words, which is translated.
So I'll quote the headline from South China Morning Post is, China calls for boycott on, quote, overly entertaining entertainers and, quote, sissy idols in continued purge of popular culture industry.
Yeah. So they basically stated China's media regulator wants traditional culture promoted, correct beauty standard, and a boycott of sissy idols and vulgar internet celebrities. So part of this is to crack down on the massive industry of like internet celebrities, because that's a big thing in China, just like it is in the US. They don't want that. They think that's negative, which it is. But also
Jake Paul or Logan Paul, which is the national hero. God damn it!
They're both brothers.
They're both national treasures. God damn it!
Yeah.
You'll take my Paul brothers from my cold dead hands.
But they're also cracking down on celebrities, and there's been actually a lot of like actual well-known celebrities being cracked down for, you know, tax fraud and, you know, tax evasion, things like sexual assault allegations, and actually like
having a Me Too moment.
It's like restricting people who aren't actually like upholding society standards. There's a huge crackdown on singing competition shows and stuff like that, which I know you're a big fan of. And I mean, I'm also for the crackdown.
Can I just say something about this article?
Yeah.
So it features a lot of imagery of the sissy idols that they're cracking down on, or examples of sort of Chinese like celebrities. And can I just say I would?
Yeah.
I absolutely would. Yeah.
Someone did send to me on Twitter, and I didn't check it, but that part of the like crackdown on like this sissy male performer, which like includes like makeup. They're pushing a masculine like kind of standard, which is like kind of still culturally tied in China, but they think it might be to cut down on like the K-pop and J-pop influence.
I mean, that's fine.
That's fine.
I don't personally think that strong enforcement of, you know, traditional gender norms is a good thing or necessary, but cracking down on K-pop just feels like a social good in general.
Just ban it. Like if you don't need, I don't.
In the US, you mean we should just ban it
everywhere?
Yeah.
I don't. Well, for one, industry it's gross, but like in how they treat their performers.
Oh,
but
you mean they're dancing monkeys?
But I think the sissy thing is kind of stupid in China, because I don't think that's really useful and promote anything good or whatever. And there has been people in China who've criticized this for the same reason, which we're told it's not allowed. It's one view only, but there's a lot of discussion around this. It's mandated and everyone needs to follow. Like,
can we go back to singer and actor Roy Wang Yuan of boy group TF Boys, and like I'm free this Saturday. If he's free this Saturday, he can call me because I'm free this Saturday. Like if he, yeah.
I'm more of a Dimash fan who actually got really big, at least to Western audiences, through his Chinese like song contest shows appearances.
Yeah, no, Dimash is great.
Yeah, if you guys don't know, look up Dimash Kudaibergen. I just type in Dimash, you'll find results. He's like the most impressive singer in the world. like actually.
There's a fetching photo of actor Lu Han attending the Gucci Aria show.
Does he have pink hair?
Yes, I think it's pink light.
Well, that should be banned.
But I'm free on Sunday if or maybe a Saturday if Roy's busy.
Yeah. So I'm torn on some of this stuff. Like, I obviously get there's a big purpose of cracking down on this, especially because if China is trying to like move away from its marketization effects, which did have a big liberalization and like capitalist influence from outside on culture and entertainment and industry and stuff, you obviously need to like handle it some way. It's just not just going to like go away peacefully, because that's not how the world works. But also I think there's still like some inner like issues of like, is this actually like beneficial for socialism or whatever, or is it just kind of like personal bias? Like of like, oh, men wearing makeup, even though like I'm pretty sure in like Peking opera and stuff they also wear makeup. Like,
no, yeah, I don't think that's the issue here. I mean, I it's funny, right, in an episode where we've been sort of talking about some of the sort of like civil libertarian perspectives. I think that's still an important perspective, right? I actually do think kind of the notion of individual autonomy matters. The problem is that we sit here in 2021 at a time when nothing else exists, right? The rhetoric we've learned about sort of this like individual autonomy or personal identity and brand, like that all sort of developed out of at a time when there's a sort of stifling monoculture, often enforced through actual law, that it was counterposing. That's no longer the case. That's all gone. Yeah. And all you have is this just bizarre sort of like culture of infinite permissiveness, that it runs on sort of interpersonal caprice, or like a sort of the personal malice and or tastes and passions of the individual, and that's what determines what's good or bad in the world. And so there's nothing to rail against. There's no machine to rage against. It's like you are the machine.
The machines are celebrity individuals who are kind of like their own kind of brand and corporation now, because that's what the online culture has done, is created this wave of like influencer types people and celebrities who actually have a significant amount of influence. I mean, think about Kim Kardashian in the US. The fact she's being like used for like, or using her influence and power and wealth to have a say in like giant political things like criminal justice, whether it's good or bad, who cares? But she has a significant role, and these measures are one to like also to curb the wealth of this group of people, but also the influence to make sure it's actually going with where the country aspires to go for everyone, and also make sure like the inequality is not going, because these people aren't gonna like fight in the end if like there's like another breakout of violence between the workers and the factories and celebrities. They're gonna be like, let's bring some fucking capitalism because we're gonna make even more money. Like, of course they are. Like,
yeah, I mean, to the extent that like we've seeded the idea of culture into the realm of the political or into the realm of the market, where it's, you know, your the whether something is culturally good or bad is actually to do with sort of brand affinity. You choose to follow Kim Kardashian West's brand of like culture, or you pick I don't know, pick another fucking non-celebrity like fucking Logan Paul. And that's your version of the perfect society. Or we reduce into the realm of a sort of shadow game of politics of like, shadow puppet. I mean, as in there's nothing real going on. You just get to sort of watch a show that's being projected from far off, and you get to sort of see the shadows boxing each other, and that's where we think we're having our culture wars. So the idea of actually wielding power in service of culture is just so alien and foreign, and that's why these headlines play really well in the US, is because it's the idea of like, what? They're trying to limit our video game time or something, but that doesn't make sense in that frame, because it's not it's not in the realm of a kind of like nonsense culture war prosecuted through media, and it's not a brand of marketized kind of brand affiliation, right? Of like, oh no, I wear these shoes because I'm a gamer, therefore I play these games. But I wear these shoes, I choose to purchase this brand of toothpaste, therefore I think this about this issue. Like, it's neither of those things. And so we have no cultural frame for it, and it seems entirely foreign. And yet it wasn't foreign in this country literally probably 30 years ago.
Well, I think these countries that are like rapidly developing also can kind of see where this kind of like mass liberalization, I mean like market liberalization in like the cultural production like industry sphere has gone. And there's a reason like the US mostly just imports all of its artists from like other countries where there's still like a cultivation of like art and like you know what I mean? Like they actually like prepare like people to be actually like true performers and cultural contributors versus like, oh, I'm a TikToker who can sing kind of well and I have 1 million followers, so I'm going to get signed. And it doesn't matter if I'm like amazing. Like you think about like the mashes of like Kazakhstan, which was a former Soviet state, where they probably still have some of that influence of.
I mean, he was made in a lab.
Literally. But
5.5, 6 octave range, whatever he has.
But I mean,
crazy motherfucker.
He is like a true like cultural contributor and performer versus like, I don't know, you have like Addison Rae from TikTok who has a nice voice, but like she's not a like contributing any way in the cultural sphere that helps anyone.
They're
She's
not
like,
allowed to. It's
no, they can't.
It's about a corporation monetizing her audience.
Yeah.
That's what that's for, right? That's why you pick up these stars. You sort of do a like churn out something. It's a product. And this is all a machine.
Most of the artists are like good when they actually like are trying to build up their careers, and once they adapt, they just become the same model. Like,
well, because there's one formula. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. Just as a finishing note.
Yeah.
ABBA have announced they're back together, and they're doing a weird ass holographic. Speaking of video games, they're doing a weird ass like CGI like video game character lip sync version of their stage show in a theater in London, and they're putting out a new album, which I'm kind of excited about. I like ABBA.
Oh, I didn't see that. I just saw the hologram and I was like, that's fucking
They're
weird.
a little creepy, right?
Yeah,
a little uncanny. It's a little bit Princess Leia in the Star Wars movie that came out after she died.
In Vegas, I was walking with Gian's husband around, and we walked past the thing, and it was like Whitney Houston, and he was like, "Isn't she dead?" I'm like, I think so. I'm like, no. Because like, why would you for me? And I look again, I'm like, oh no, it's a hologram concert of Whitney Houston. I'm like, okay, I'm good. Because like, I thought she like died of like drugs, but also like, this is really creepy. Like,
no, we're digging up our celebrities and having them do entertainment products now. Speaking of, I think we're about done, but next week we're going to have special guest Hologram Karl Marx join us on the program. We're very excited about that. So tune in next time.
Okay, bye.
Bye.